There we go. I think there we go. It's all working. Hello, friends. Hello, Hogan. Hello, Super Dylan. How are you doing, my friends? Hope you're all well. My name is Fiona. I use she/her pronouns, and this is Too Long Didn't Read Tabletop RPGs, in which I spend an hour or two going for an RPG that's caught my interest, whether it's from the bookshelf of mystery or the Google Drive of forgotten PDFs. I hope you're doing well, my friends. I'm doing okay. I always seems to be bloody busy, which is good. It's good to be busy. But I was yesterday I was like, great, this is gonna be wonderful. I've got a nice afternoon of not doing anything, and then someone was like, don't we have a recording? And I was like, yes, we do, and I need to do the recording. So that was fine. And then I was just looking forward to the weekend. I'm looking forward to just what I've been doing. I've been playing Red Dead Redemption 2, and that has been my chill time of just going about on a horse, saving strangers from their own choices. I'll tell you what happened last night. Very relatable. Yep. It's good. It's good, but at the same time, I'm just there like, just could do with just a how about an afternoon where I could just do some reading. I'd like that. Oh, Red Dead is so good. Oh, mate, let me tell you. So I really loved the first game, Red Dead Redemption. I cried. I loved it so much. And then when Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, I couldn't get into it because I had such a strong like nostalgia for the first one and that character of John Marston, and so this obviously Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't about that. Anyway, I recently got back into it. God, it's great. This everything about it. I will say though, so I recently we did a story mission. Won't spoil it in case people who are watching this are like, I would like to play it. Even though it's been out for a few years. There's a mission where you go save someone who's just I just would have left them in jail, to be honest with you, because they go up shooting the town, and then you have to go and sort them all out. And you're like, okay, and then you get a bounty on you of like $300 ish, and I'm there like, oh, for God's sake, I need this money to build a better camp. Or I've been helping nice ladies across the road and stuff, trying to get my honor up. Anyway, managed to club together all the money together, so I got about $300. I sold all my stuff because I was like, I hate this having to be over. I hate having this thing over my head. So I went, I paid it, and I was like, done. I went out, got on my horse. I galloped with the horse, and I went hit straight on into another individual who was on horseback, and the sheer impact of my horse going at top speed to their horse going at no speed, I somersaulted over the top of them. My horse was fine, I was fine. I killed that NPC on impact. And someone saw it and said it was murder, and I got another bounty, and I was so cross. I had to rush after them, hog-tie them, and convince them that I'm not a bad person, but I still have $15 to pay back for the bounty. Really love it. So frustrated. I'm like, done, and then I just caused more problems for myself as a result. Anyway, but yeah, that's my brain inactive time, which is good. But that's not what we're doing. I'm not enough talking about Red Dead Redemption, although I'm sure if I work out how to stream it, I'm sure that'll be something of interest to do. But today, friends, we are looking at Canon, a Canon game, which is by Vermilion Games. I sort of mentioned this yesterday. Vermilion Games, the only sort of reason I know about Vermilion Games is because of one of the best solo games I've ever played. Solo games I've ever played, called Twain, which was about this idea that you had a twin growing up, and when you used to do magic together, but your twin carried on magic and you didn't, and you lost touch. And then the idea is that towards the end of that game, you go out to a space where you dreamt that you would meet up with your twin, and then you just spend 20 minutes LARPing waiting for your twin. And you set a timer on your phone, and that's when your twin rings you. And I did it during COVID and did it during the pandemic when we first locked down, and that was great. It was really fun just to go on my daily constitutional and just really feel those feelings. So it was one of the best solo games I'd ever played. So it's by the same, it's of the same publishing place, but I don't know anything about it. But of course, before we even attempt to go into these things, let's do some disclaimers at the top. So first of all, I am not a game designer. I run a lot of games. I've run What Am I Rolling and the DM's Book Club, which are RPG adjacent. And I read a lot of games thanks to this channel. And the reason I do that is because it's something I enjoy, something I find exciting. But the what was I going to say? The disclaimer is that I am not a game designer. I've never published a game. Maybe one day, who knows? But the idea is that all this is sort of critique rather than criticism. I never mean this as a you should do this or why does this isn't work, etc. Because I have no idea if it does or it doesn't. So that's one thing. Second thing is that I'm not sponsored by Vermilion Games. I actually don't know if they're active anymore, unfortunately. It's been very quiet on that front. I know. People get very busy and stuff like that, but the website's still up, and I'll show you that in a second. But I'm not sponsored to do them. I've just, it came out of the random number generator that I brought up. And then finally, content warnings. I don't know is the answer to this one. Again, I've not read this RPG. Are you all right, chair? It's just my chair's wobbling everything about me. Gosh. I don't know anything about this game. I'll do disclaimers as they come up. Sorry, not disclaimers, content warnings. But if you're like, this game is not for me, absolutely fine. Take a moment to step away from the stream. Come back if and when you're ready, because I appreciate no one really wants to listen to me read out games. All right, friends, let's get away from big Fiona face. We'll go teeny tiny Fiona face. So this is Vermilion Games. I put a link to it in the chat, so that's good. And I'll just quickly switch over. So this is Twain. It's the game I was talking about. First of all, what a great cover that is, and you can get some edition stuff. Again, I don't know if they're still available, because the reason I found out about them is that there isn't a PDF for that game. So again, would go check it out. That's definitely my recommendation, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about Canon, which is on this side. So there you go. Very straightforward. I love websites that are just simple, right? All the stuff's in the middle. It makes it optimized for mobile devices. So there you go. And the most important thing is that this edition that we're looking at today is free to download. I think it's maybe more of an Ashcan, perhaps. I don't think I've seen any paid version of it. So if you go to vermilion.games/canon, you can download for free and read along if you'd like to. I highly recommend it. Again, more traffic, maybe more people wanting to play the games. So as always, what we do, we always look at the move in a little bit so we can read it. We always look at the marketing copy, because that is the most important bit. I know I go on about this every stream, but just in case, I always think it's important because it's what gets people excited about your game. You might know this game's got this, this, and this, but if the copy isn't great for whatever reason, if it's a bit convoluted, if it's a bit hard to read or anything like that, instantly people get put off by it. So, with all that out of the way, let's get started. So, Canon. Listen once. Gather round a virtual fire and create the folk tales and myths of an imaginary people. Short, strange stories whose original cultural context has been lost to time. Create a living body of stories and discover the culture that tells them, how the stories came to be preserved and passed down, and why they hold those stories dear. Canon is a game about myths and oral culture, the relationship between a culture and the stories it tells, how story traditions develop, and the stories that give rise to endless, unresolved interpretations. One day I'll be able to say that word. Not today. So yeah, interesting. Instantly I'm thinking of the other game we looked at, which was the Told by Starlight game, which was that game where we mapped constellations onto the pages and then told stories about what they represented. So a similar thing. I love a good world building game. I love games that you can make stuff around your game and just using different systems and different ways to just tell stories. You might enjoy this game if you like seeing a setting and culture merge collaboratively as you add details one by one, and if you really like mythology and folklore, tick, or if you ever wanted to sit around a campfire telling ancient stories that you've never heard before. Interesting. So that's a cool thing. Again, I wonder if Vermilion is definitely more LARPy than anything else, but that could be quite cool if you're camping out, if you're at a festival, or whatever, and for whatever reason you're not going to see the music bands or something like that. You're like, hey, why don't we play a game? I will say, going back from Gen Con on the Sunday, but last night, we actually played some LARP-like RPG games as we were eating food and stuff and having a drink, and it was so much fun. Really fun, those games, because it was just because we're all in the same mind. We're let's play something. And it's not necessarily a drinking game or anything like that, but it was a cool storytelling. It was actually a debating game that we were doing, and really good fun, really good fun. So this beta, the Cameron version of Canon was put together in response to the current need for social distancing, with rules and descriptions adapted so it can run over video chat. So this sort of game came out during 2020 to 2023, so that time. Gathering to tell stories during difficult and dangerous times is an ancient tradition in its own right, and so we hope this version of Canon will be a good way to connect with people in your life pass time together, and hopefully bring a little fun and wonder into this difficult moment. How good is that? Again, it almost feels like a little bit of history, a little bit of like a moment captured there, that this game, or this version of this game, came together because of the pandemic and COVID. And again, it's that sort of thing where maybe, if people don't want to play a role-playing game, if you're someone that meets online regularly, and if you do gaming online regularly, maybe something like this will be a nice different evening, if you run out of those pub quizzes, So yeah. And what's nice as well, there's a one-page summary, there's some handouts, and the actual edition stuff. So we've downloaded the edition to look at. The one-page summary we're not going to look at. Again, I think a lot of it's going to be repeated or covered in the same way. And yeah, I've got the handouts as well. So there you go. That's it. Nice, simple. I think it tells what it is. Yeah, nothing else to really comment on it. But yeah, I like it as a copy. Right, let us then. She says, try to find all the buttons. There we go, Canon. There we go. So Canon, the Ash Can. Yes, this is the edition. From the quick look through it, it's very text based. So it's again going to be really good for screen readers and all that sort of thing. There's no alt text on this particular image. Again, I always go on about alt text, but I appreciate that this is more of an Ash Can. It's just going to get the text out there. So it's maybe not, it's probably not going to have much art in it, and maybe just a lot of tables and stuff like that. So again, in terms of layout, it's going to be very easy to read, but maybe not as visually appealing for those people who are visual learners, etc. But that's okay. I much prefer having text like this and not having to be like, what is that? What's that style? I can't read through it. Like we did that when I was looking at Orkborg, when I ran Orkborg at the weekend for Gen Con. Great game. Loved it. Could I read any of the book? Nope. Nope, I could not. Okay, so this game is by John Argamon and Henry Tousner. Tousner? There we go. All right. And as always, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. But again, and this is the thing as well, it's easily a game you could print out if you're one of those people with ye old-fashioned printers. All right. Let's take a drink. Got to get some use out of the Wild Bill's metal tanker that I bought. So Canon is a game about creating the myths of an imaginary culture. Short, strange stories whose original cultural context has been lost to time. As you build a living body of stories, you'll invent the people who are told and preserve these stories, deciding who these storytellers are, what their culture is, and why they keep telling these myths for so long. You might enjoy this game if you like seeing a setting and culture merge collaboratively as you add details one by one, if you really like mythology and folklore, or if you ever wanted to sit around a campfire telling ancient stories that you've never heard before. This game is for 3 to 6 players, and you can play a full game in under 6 hours. Interesting. So yeah, it could be like a nice long evening outside camping. And in the box here it says, probably like an optional rule, we've got, you can stretch it out a lot longer if you want, telling more stories and lingering longer over the details of the storytellers. You can break this into multiple sessions of a couple of hours each, or even start telling stories in the spare moments between other activities. I love that, that's good. I would say massive big gaps here though. I think it may be, oh, you know what it is, like the aligned version. So it's the only thing I'd say. It's a little bit not too, oh God, it makes me so cross when there's a gap like that. But I think it's just the formatting. In slightly bigger letters, it says you don't need to read these rules in advance. When you start, the rules will tell your group how to start playing step by step. That's interesting. That's a really good accessibility thing because, again, if you're one of those people who doesn't have time to read games, and because I appreciate time is a privilege. I'm a big fan of games that can be like, let's do it step by step, and you learn by doing. Because that's something that I do. I would actually even say I would put this maybe up here, perhaps, maybe a little bit higher so people can see it. It is slightly emboldened, so or slightly bigger so people can see it. All you need before you start is a player in charge of reading some directions aloud and facilitating some discussions. So that's me, chaps, don't worry. You can have one person facilitate throughout, or you can take turns. A copy of this document in an accessible form. At any moment, the facilitator might need to be looking at the whole document, and everyone else have access to the handouts starting on page 18. So I've got both the handouts and then this PDF. So actually, the whole rules to this place must be only 16 pages. The whole document is 27 pages, this PDF, and the handouts are only 11 pages. Okay, good to know. Some way for people to share written information. You'll want a bit of space specifically dedicated to each character and also some collective space. A single shared text document will work if people don't mind scrolling up and down. A Discord or Slack server with a channel for each character would work too. Oh, interesting. So yeah, as it said, it's been designed to be online compatible already from the outset. I guess if you're doing this in person, just to be that sort of person, maybe like a whiteboard that you could give around, or maybe have a shared WhatsApp, perhaps, or yeah, maybe you just use Discord on your phone, perhaps. But again, do you want people to be like here looking down at their phones and their digits, I was going to say gadgets and devices, so digits, rather than speaking aloud? But that's it. So again, it's another game that doesn't necessarily use any die rolls. So we had that yesterday with the skeletons when we talked about that. There was only like a D6, but then you didn't have to use it at all. It was mostly conversational. When you're all gathered together and ready to start, whoever's facilitating should take the next page and follow the instructions on it. Oh, look at that, introduction and safety. So tell the group. So we're about to create a body of ancient mythic stories. And as we do, we're also going to create the culture that tells and remembers those stories. The storytellers might be very different from the people in the stories, much like the way modern Americans still tell Greek myths, despite being very different from ancient Greeks, and even more different from the people in Greek myths. Before we start, we should establish some boundaries of the kinds of stories we're going to tell. Canon does this in two ways. First, we use lines and veils. Lines is contents that we're not going to avoid entirely. They're just off limits and no one should introduce them into the story. Veils are content for which there is a soft limit. It's okay for this topic to come up, but it shouldn't be the central focus or get a lot of detail. If one does come up, we'll usually fade to black. You're invited here to name anything that you would put on either of these lists. Again, if I was going to play this game, again, I think this is the sort of thing that you could do in advance, right? Again, it's part of the Session 0 admin. If you do it in advance, then you could be like, here's it done anonymously, here's all the stuff you can look at. So that's the only thing I would say on that front. Make two lists, one for lines and one for veils, and give the group a little time to suggest anything they would like to put on either list. Put the lists somewhere that everyone has easy access to and see what's on them. So yeah, again, if we had the whiteboard idea, we could then put them, like, people, you could pass around the thing and people could write on them as they go. And maybe you could even start by putting like some ones that are always going to be lines, the usual sort of phobic behaviors. Once it seems that people are done, tell the group, it is impossible to predict everything that might come up during our stories, so we're going to be using the X card. That means that if something comes up in the story that is uncomfortable or triggering, you can indicate you want to remove that element from the game by saying or typing X card or just X. At that point, the group will pause and rewind the story, or maybe just drop that story entirely. We might also update the lines and veils when that happens. And then in a little, again, I like this, like, again, it separates out like optional or important bits of information from the general text, which I think is important. So it says here, and I presume this is like the game designers having a note on it as well. So this is a little grey box. And we have a note about the X card. So in general, we don't think the X card is appropriate for all games. If someone has just put in something that's very personal to a game, it can be helpful if someone else's X's away the topic without resolution. We think that the X card is appropriate for this game, because canon stories do not usually get so deeply personal that the issue comes up. But if your group finds itself going in that direction, you might need to replace the X card with a more flexible approach. You can find some ideas of how to do this in the TTRPG safety toolkit. It's a shame there's there's a link there, but it's not an actual hyperlink. I see it. It's good to mention it, absolutely good to mention it. So the TTRPG safety toolkit is a resource created by Canon Shaw and Lauren Bryant Monk. There we go. The TTRPG safety toolkit is a compilation. Oh gosh, my words today are not going great, are they? A source, like a big old mix of safety tools that have been designed by members of the tabletop role-playing community for use by players and GMs at the table. Compilation? Yeah. You or somebody else should start reading the next page. Okay, so there you go. That's all the session 0, all the safety tools done. So the first question. Make sure everyone sees the setting creation sheet, which is on page 18. Well, why don't we have a look at this? There you go. Setting creation. This is the handout stuff, so we've got it here. So everyone should be looking at this point. So tell the group. The first thing we're going to do is to make the world within the stories, the setting where the myths take place. These kinds of stories always take place in a distinctive landscape, like frozen mountains or a deep forest. It might be a single landscape, or it might be a couple of related landscapes, like both a valley and a mountain range surrounding it. Tell the group, this is the first time we'll reach a consensus together. I need 3 ideas to get us started. We're going to follow the consensus process, pages 26 to 27. Since this is the first time we're using it, the instructions on this page will walk you through it step by step. Okay. So, ask 3 specific people to suggest landscapes. Tell them, don't worry too much about coming up with a really unique or stylish idea. It can be one of the ideas from the examples in the setting creation sheet, as long as it's a landscape you enjoy telling stories in. In Canon, if something seems like the obvious thing, it's probably the right thing. I'm a big fan of that, actually. Just don't think about being like funny, witty, or clever. That's the thing in improv, right? But if you just go, what's the obvious thing? That is probably it. Well, let's have a quick look, shall we? So we've got, here's some, is there some examples here? There you go, some examples here at the top. Zoom in a little bit. So we've got stuff like a fertile plain surrounded by a vast desert, the cold and inhospitable north, the archipelago, and the blackness between the stars. That's great. I love that one. Good. Give people a short amount of time to respond to the suggestions, and then make a single concrete proposal. It might be one of the suggestions someone's made unchanged, or you might try to combine a couple of them into a single landscape. Tell the group, we're going to take a temperature check to see how the group feels about this proposal. You should vote thumbs up if you're happy with the landscape for our mythic stories, or you should vote thumbs down if you don't like this landscape or think there's a problem or needs more discussion. You should vote sideways if you're okay with this being our choice, but not necessarily excited. Ooh. If everyone votes thumbs up, you've picked a landscape and write it down somewhere. If you or someone else should start reading the next page. The first time through, if anyone voted thumbs sideways or thumbs down, talk about it. Ask those people what their reservations are. Let people discuss a bit and then ask someone to make a new proposal incorporating what has been said. It might be a modification of the first proposal that incorporates what has been discussed, or it might go in a totally different direction. Take a second temperature check. Again, if everyone votes thumbs up, write down the proposal and move on to the next stage. If anyone votes thumbs down, or someone votes thumbs sideways and you're not sure why, or you think they might change to a thumbs up or you might think they might change to a thumbs up with a little more discussion, then repeat this process. Oh, Fiona, make sure people can see it. Repeat this process, discuss, then ask for a concrete proposal, and then take a temperature check. So it's constantly checking in with each other. I like how the thumbs up, thumbs down, sideways one, that's a temperature check. That's great. I actually didn't have a name for that because we've done it in improv before. So how are people feeling today? And people are like blue on this sort of line. So I quite like that. All right. Next, tell the group of mythic elements. Sorry. Next, we're going to choose the mythic elements of our setting. These are the ways the world of the myths is different from our ordinary world. It can include things that might not exist there, that even we don't see every day, like magic or talking animals or gods. It also includes things that have a special resonance in our myths. Perhaps swords or blood or ice are particularly meaningful. Take a look at the examples in the setting creation sheet. What we create here will give us a shared palette for creating stories together. They'll give us both the mythic elements themselves or name a few groups of people in a society that are going to show up in the stories we tell. Okay, let's have a look-see then. So there's some examples here. It says, so everyone knows runes cannot write a lie. Those in society have those whose society has abandoned can use them to write lies that become true. Ooh, whoa, I love that. That's interesting. Okay, and the next one it says here, everyone knows you'll need to leave offerings out for the fair folk. Only the foolish would believe their promises. And then everyone knows tide pools transport you to other worlds. Farmers know that they don't open for people who have family to return to. There's some more examples here, like stuff here. We've got ghosts, talking animals. Gotta love talking animals. The wicked is different. Oh, so different elements and different groups, so you could combine them together, perhaps. Nice. I think it's quite good. Again, the only thing I would maybe do is maybe put them into like a random table to roll, perhaps, if people aren't sure. But I like the examples here. Again, just maybe a little bit less, because there's a lot of it's just a little bit dense in that particular example. Oh, take a look. Yep, done that. Mythic elements. There we go. So what we'll create here will give us a shared palette for stories together, and that will be mythic elements. Name a few group of people in society that will show up in the stories we tell. Tell someone. So you'll start the first mythic element. Pick a mythic element and a fact that everyone knows about it. If necessary, remind people that they should feel free to use examples from the sheet, and that if something seems like an obvious or easy answer, they should do it. Or they should use it, sorry. Tell the person to their right, you will finish the mythic element. Pick a group of people who have a special importance to the society in the myths, and what those people know about the element. Oh, so it's almost like, very collaborative then. So one person starts with the first choice of that mythic element, and then the people. Nice, I like it. Write down the mythic element. Keep going around the circle until everyone has created the first half, or one half of the mythic element, and the second half of a different one. That's cool. So you probably go around twice, right? It says here, if you have an even number of players, you'll have to skip the first person when you return to them, and then have them contribute to the last element when they get back to them. Right. Okay. So everyone gets a chance here. So for example, if you only have 3 players, you might want to pick 2 players to add a 4th mythic element to flesh things out. Oh, so it's even if you've got as small as 3 players. If you're playing with more than 6 players, you'll have to decide on how to order things so that everyone gets to contribute close to evenly, but you don't end up with more than 6 elements, 6 mythic elements even. If somebody gives an answer that doesn't quite follow the rules, ask them to tweak it. I do think this is important. It's just a way to help shape and help make the game as is, rather than having some wild elements out there. So here's some advice, I guess. So the first half of the mythic element needs to introduce an actual thing that might show up in the stories. So stuff like runes, dryads, holy berserkers. Be careful of the answers that are cool or atmospheric, so everyone knows that the world is dying. But don't do this. Interesting. The second half establishes a group, or rarely an individual, that's important to society. Watch out for the second halves that don't actually establish a social group or an entity. So, for example, but the end can still be averted. When you've recorded your mythic elements, record them somewhere that everyone can see them during play. They should be present and visible to help inspire story ideas. When playing in person, you might need to ask people to help you make up 1 or 2 extra copies so that everyone can see them. Again, like I said, getting a whiteboard, blackboard, all that sort of thing, or having it like a shared Google thing on your phone. You or someone else should start reading the next page. Okay. So characters. Tell the group. Later, we're going to be creating a legendary figure who people have told a lot of stories about. Right now, we're going to decide what kinds of people or creatures show up as central figures of stories. Our stories in this body of tales about kings, about regular people, about ghosts. We're going to make a list of a few kinds of characters a story might be about. So let the group make some suggestions. If you aren't getting enough, ask whether the kinds of people or creatures mentioned in mythic elements make appropriate main characters. 2 to 3 answers is a good number, but more is fine. You can also do some synthesizing and organizing. If there are several ideas that have something in common, you might suggest a category that incorporates all of them, for instance. If people have suggested several different ways a person might be an outcast, you can suggest that outcasts in general might be the category and see if everyone agrees with that synthesis. One thing I would say here, even though it's probably going to be on this handout here, be nice to have some examples. Here's an example here. Oh no, not really. Often, like, here's some examples of like kings, cultural heroes, ordinary heroes, people who have displaced their people who have been displaced from their lives, talking animals and ghosts. I think that's the only thing I'm thinking I'm missing here is that currently we don't have like a play, for example. Now, I'm someone that doesn't really like play examples, so I'm going back and forth. I don't tend not to read them out because I'm like, oh, I get the idea. But I think here would be a good example to be like, we've got an idea of what here from the, like the sort of intro stuff. On the previous page, we had like example of it not being right. I think just a play example of it going through would be quite interesting. Yeah, so tell the group. Later, you're going to make a character who belongs to one of these groups. Take one more look at the list and make sure there's at least one group there that you're excited about. Give people one more chance to add to the groups to the list, and then you or someone else should start reading the next page. I do like this, and I think I said this yesterday when we were looking at... What were we looking at yesterday? I can't remember. Oh gosh, I can't remember. Really that good a game, huh? But what I like about this, that you or someone else should start reading the next page, it means like this is the end of the section. It really highlights that quite quickly and the steps of it. I guess the only thing I would say is like, obviously, because we're reading this as we go along, it's obviously introducing us. I think I just would like a table of contents at the beginning saying like, okay, here are the 6 steps we're going to take in this game, just so that I know from the overview, really. But I do like it said, you or someone else should start reading the next section. It's almost like, turn the next page. Almost better. I think the other thing as well, I think, again, I'm not someone that particularly likes a lot of white space, but because we don't have any artwork in here, because it's Ashcan rules, I understand why they have this, to really separate out, okay, we're going to go on to the next page, which is Ultimate Power. That's the next step in our game. If you had them both on here, you might miss that it's the next step. So Utmost Power. Tell the group, we're going to decide the utmost power in our myths. This is something that, like, the mighty gods rule everything. All the world is doomed. All love conquers all. The utmost power is the inner logic that suffuses the stories, even if it does not show up directly in every story. So, for instance, not every Norse myth is directly about Ragnarok. But nonetheless, the world's inevitable doom colours and influences this body of stories as a whole. That's a very good example. Facilitate deciding what the utmost power is, following the steps on the consensus sheet. Once the group has decided, record the answer where everyone can see it, and then you or someone else should start reading the next page. It was in Skeletons. Skeletons had it yesterday, where we had this sort of like, everything goes to dust, and that is the end, and that is the end. That's sort of repetition. So let's see, what's the examples here? We've got what's the utmost power in the world. There is fate. The gods are mercurial and powerful. Mercurial is such a good word. One of my favourite words is mercurial. And incidentally, the reason why Mercutio is called that Mercutio is because it comes from Mercurial. And his character, their character, because they can be either gender, you know, it is volatile and loving and all those things, but back and forth. So there you go, Mercurial, Mercutio. Primordial forces of nature can be interacted. That's in Romeo and Juliet, by the way. So I realised I just said Mercutio as if everyone knows Shakespeare. Primordial forces of nature can be interacted with but never controlled. I've got loads of examples there. Again, maybe would break this up a little bit just in terms of layout so people can read it. Maybe do some bullet points, but otherwise, yeah, quite good. And then once. Well, that's probably the next thing, right? Ritual phrase, sorry. So tell the group, the last thing we need to decide is how the storytellers begin these stories. Ooh, I like this. These stories always begin with the same phrase, just like Once Upon a Time tells us that we're about to hear a fairy tale. This phrase tells the storytellers that they're about to hear one of these myths. It's the first little thing we're learning about our storytellers because it tells us a little about their relationships to the stories. Facilitate deciding what the ritual phrase is, following the steps on the consensus sheet. And you or someone else should start reading that. I love that. That's so true. I like that. So here we've got some example ones. So Once Upon a Time, in our first days under the sun, when God still walked the earth, before the first winter, in the days of your mother's mother's mother. That's a great one. I like that. That's brilliant. I would absolutely use that one. After the altar of the sea was broken. and even as the Emperor's writing. What great! Again, I would love loads more examples there. But yeah, I think if I was playing this, I'd absolutely use "in the days of your mother's mother's mother." What a great. Yeah, that one. Picked, done. Right, creating characters. So make sure everyone sees the creating characters sheet, which is page 19, which is this one. And a character sheet, which is page 20, so that's the one after this one. So tell the group we're each going to make a mythic figure. Each of these characters will be the central character of their own series of stories. There might be stories where some of them will meet each other, but mostly each of them will have their own stories centered around them. Each character will be one of the types of people we picked earlier. To make a character, we'll fill out a character sheet. If you're in person, demonstrate folding a character sheet in half and standing it up as a tent, so that the side with the most text faces you, and the mostly blank side faces the group. Tell the group, on the back we're going to fill out 5 facts about the character. A name, a legendary role, a personal trait, a story snippet, and a characteristic action. Some people like to coordinate on making names share a consistent phonology. Ooh, I don't know that word. Presumably, actually, let's look it up. I've never heard of that word. Phonology. I think that's how you pronounce it. Phonology. The system of contrasting relationships amongst the speech sounds that constitute the fundamental components of a language. There you go. The more you know. I did not know that. It is a branch of linguistics that studies how languages systematically organize their phones, or for sign language, their the parts of the signs, the constituent part of signs. So there you go. I guess yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah, phonics, right? Phonics. So phonology. That can be fun if everyone's into it, but it's not the central focus of this game. Oh, okay, sorry. I got excited. If your group wants to do it, now's the time to talk about that phonology. But keep an eye on everyone and cut off the conversation if someone starts to get bored. It's like, all right, dull conversation is happening. Let's move on. Tell the group. The legendary role is a short phrase that describes some way the character is unique and memorable. For these parts of a character, the character creation sheet has some examples. Each character has a well, actually, let's look at that then. The first queen we've got here. The second to last great hero. Oh, that's a good one. I like that one. The strongest man who ever lived. The wise fool. The betrayer. Love it. That's great. Very evocative, isn't it? Each character has a personal trait, which is something that which characterizes the way they behave. So, for example, clever Odysseus. The personal trait should be a single concept, but it doesn't have to be a single word. But it should feel like something that should be. But it should feel like something that. Wait, hang on. But it should feel like something that could be a single word. Maybe it is one word in the original language. Okay, so what examples have we got? Big of heart, who could not lie, who loved her people. Beautiful, loyal to a fault. Nice. Some good ones there. The snorri snippet. Oh, someone's tired today, huh? The story snippet is a fragment of the character's history. It might be something about their past, like their lineage, or an event in their future that can be a story about. It could be something in general about their kinds of stories, like lover of kings and priestesses. Let's see. Oh, there's no example here. There's some general traits. Maybe that's what it's talking about? No. Maybe? Who spoke of the word winter? Lover? Okay, so this would be the story traits, perhaps. Whose father was a snake. Oh, damn straight. Who slay her brother, who died twice. I love that. The two died twice? Great. Some good examples there. And then finally, each character has a characteristic action. It's what they're best known for doing. For example, Odysseus tricks people, Hercules beats up people, etc. The characteristic action is here in part for characterization, but also to help you tell stories. If you're not sure how to end a story, just do your characteristic action. even if it doesn't seem like it makes sense. That means if you pick something complicated like says something clever, it means you'll have to come up with what they say. It doesn't actually have to be clever, but it has to be something the story can believe is clever. So be sure to pick a characteristic action you're comfortable with narrating whenever that happens. Okay, let's have a look at some examples. Beating someone up with an oar, classic. Doing something stupid, maybe just doing something unwise perhaps will be better. Fainting, oh great, yeah, absolutely. Finding a third option, necromancy, interesting. Give people time to make their characters, answer questions and repeat explanations, and direct people to the examples as needed. If people ask, if someone discovers now they don't really like any of the kinds of characters the group picked earlier, let them add a new one and add it to the list. It's fine if the characteristic action repeats one of the other items or is heavily implied by it, but the legendary role, personal trait, and story snippet, God, a snory snippet, should each contribute something distinct to the mythic character. As each person finishes their character, or as people finish making characters, tell them, once you've created a character, write down the information listed on the character sheet where everyone can see it. The character's introduction will be part of the start of each of this character's story. Hang on, what? The character's introduction will be part of the start of each of this character's stories. Okay. That could do with some copy editing, that particular sentence. I think that's a little bit difficult to say aloud. There's a suggested format on the character sheet, but you can edit or rearrange it if something else sounds more poetic. Once everyone's finished, have everyone read their character introductions out loud. Tell the group, you might also have a clear idea of what sort of tone your character stories have. Maybe you already know that they're comedic, or tragic, or cautionary tales. If so, you should let the group know, but it's also fine if you don't have a particular tone in mind. Nice, I like that actually. I like that, so you can have like a whole range of stories, but you could also be like very specific, going, hey, these are cautionary tales because of the unwise fool and all that sort of thing. You and someone else should start reading the next page. Okie dokie. Make sure everyone sees the storytelling summary. So go through. So this is the character sheet. Oh look, we've got pronouns on there. Hooray! That's nice. So yeah, this is just a bit of a rundown of what it is. So public post, the introduction, characteristic action, we'll get there, and the pronouns. Okie dokie. And then the storytelling summary is here. So make sure everyone sees that summary. So we've got it there. Nice. Tell the group. Here's how telling stories works. One of us will begin a story using the formula, listen once, and then our ritual phrase, and then the introduction of one of the other players' characters. They'll start a story about that character. The best story starters usually present an opportunity, a threat, or both. Don't be afraid to put the mythic character right in the middle of a situation, surrounded by bandits, about to get married, imprisoned, having been tricked by a dryad, even already dead. But don't worry about setting up the story with a clear and obvious ending. When you've finished narrating the situation the character is in, and you're ready to turn over narrative control, say, and so. At that point, the player of that character will take over and narrate the conclusion. Oh, I like that. That it's your character. You decide the ending for that character. That's awesome. I love that. They have total and absolute power over how the story ends. Feel free to suddenly grow wings and fly away. Trick someone into marriage. Oh, maybe don't do that. Or anything else. It doesn't have to follow in an obvious way from the setup. And it doesn't have to form a satisfying narrative as a whole. And it doesn't even have to make sense. It also means you don't have to be a master improviser, although it helps. And even if you're stuck, just narrate your characteristic action and end the story. These are ancient stories. It's up to later interpreters to figure out what they meant. You just have to tell them. Amazing. I like that. You just have to tell them. When you're ready to end the story, knock 3 times. Ooh, very ritualistic. That's no. Love it. So here's an example of a story about a protagonist whose characteristic action was hitting things with a hammer. So, let's better get a drink. This actually would be very good as an improv exercise. Like, I like that. It's collaborative storytelling, it's active listening. Maybe I should do a workshop on something like this and use this as a basis. It'd be quite fun. So listen. Once, when the islands were scattered, there was clever Hera, daughter of the mountain goddess, who died twice. One day, she overheard a flower and a rock arguing about whether flowers were more numerous than rocks, or rocks were more numerous than flowers. A great story. I'm loving that. They were arguing so violently it threatened to shake the land apart. And so, they turn it over to Heya and ask her to resolve the dispute. She thought for a moment, gently tied the flower in her hair, and lifted up her hammer and brought it down on the rock, which shattered into hundreds of pieces. There are more rocks, she said. Love it. That's great, and it's nice and short. You're not having lots of details about the story, just keeping it nice and to the point. Really good, and that's very good for active listening as well. This is a good moment for the group to take a brief break to stretch and think about their stories. This is a good moment for the group to take a brief break to stretch and think about the stories they might start. People can also look over sample openings on page 22, so in this next page. When the group gets back together, you or someone else will start the first story. Make sure it follows the format, beginning with the ritual phrase and introduction before the story itself. At the story's end, tell the group, after each story, there are two things that can happen. First, anyone can decide that a detail of a story was particularly compelling or memorable, and they might announce that element echoes through the ages. We'll put that in bold, perhaps. It's not too bold there. This is something people strongly associate with that story, and more generally with the character, so much that it becomes emblematic of that character. It might be something really important in the story, but sometimes a stray detail really catches people's attention. The biblical Joseph's coat of many colours is only mentioned twice in passing, but it's one of the best known and most vivid details about him. That's what echoes for the ages are like. Right. Nice. Pause to see if anyone wants to point out a piece of the story that echoes for the ages. If someone does, record it and try to put the record near that character sheet so that it will be remembered. Tell the person whose character is just finishing that story. Second, you'll get to choose between asking the group to discuss a question about the story and establishing a truth about the storytellers. If we discuss a question about the story, you'll ask us a question about how to interpret the story, and we'll go around giving our own answer. Oh, I love that. If we establish a truth, you'll ask a question about the culture of the storytellers, and we decide as a group what the answer to that question is. So let the player decide between them. Directions on how to do each are on the following pages. Different people like one of the options more, and so it's okay if your group favours one. But if you do want to have some of each as a guideline, doing the same one more than 3 times in a row is going to get excessive. Once you're done with that, keep telling stories. There's one more rule you need to know. A character can only ever have 2 echoes through the ages. The first time someone suggests an echo for a character who's already got 2, tell the player of that character, people only remember certain details about a mythic figure, so the character can only have 2 echoes at once. It is up to you to decide which 2 are visible. You make those 2 active whilst keeping all the others out of the way in retirement. You might want another less attention-getting place near the character's information sheet to remember the retired echoes. Oh, I see, I understand. Every time there is a new echo, you can pick up any 2 to be active, and you can immediately retire the new one, or take the old one, which is used to be retired, and then bring it out again. Nice. Make sure someone, maybe you, has taken a look at the breaks and recounting page and knows when they need to call for a break from telling stories at some point. All right. So here's the summary again. So once there was the first person establishes a story, and so the player finishes the story and then knocks 3 times to end it. Now, after the story, anyone may declare a piece of that story as the echo for the ages, and then the player who finished the story asks either to discuss a question, where they ask a question about the story and everyone gives an answer in turn, or establish a truth about the storytellers, where you ask a question about the storytellers. 3 people suggest answers. The group discusses the question, possibly adding or changing the suggested answers until we settle on an answer by consensus or vote. Excellent. And there's some sample story openers here. A wedding. The protagonist is getting married to ease tensions between 2 families, except the intended spouse is horrible and the tensions are about to boil over. 3 people approach the antagonist in the wilderness and each makes a wild promise or threat and asks for a night with the protagonist. For example, to bear them a child who will grow into a monarch, promises that they will always be safe under the light of the moon, the knowledge of who really created the world, and that the protagonist will never escape the wilderness, etc. I've got some good examples there. Again, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10's a good number. And then what else in terms of the handouts? Oh, some examples of story. Well, we'll come to it because we're going to do some advice on it, aren't we? Here we go. So make sure everyone sees the examples on page 23. So these examples here. But the first time someone decides to discuss a question, tell them, you ask the group a question about how the story is interpreted. Then we'll take turns each giving an answer. Then we'll each take turns giving an answer, and we will not resolve the different answers in any way. Because this is how people interpret the story. There is not a single right answer. We'll end up with many irreconcilable perspectives, just as there are always with stones. Wait, what? Just as there always are with stones. Oh, stories. I generally saw that as stones. Oh, must be tired. God, we're only just nearly an hour into this and I'm already tired. Not good. Let them ask a question. Make sure it's a question about the interpretation of the story and not a question about the storytellers or their culture. Now tell the group. Now we'll each say an answer someone might give to this question. It's okay to give the same answer as someone else or to change theirs a little. It can be an interpretation you believe in, an interpretation from a particular perspective. So scholars generally believe. That's quite a good example, I like that. Or one you think is foolish. Ooh, okay. Starting with the person to the right of the person who asked the question, everyone says an answer. And the person who asked the question goes last. Once everyone's answered, it's time for the next story. I like that. It's almost over-analysing a little bit. Between stories, establish a truth about the storyteller. So make sure everyone's seen the suggested ones of... Oh, well, let's read this. So we got, what was someone's motivation? A significance of a detail? What literally happened? How literal is a detail? Ooh. I like having the answer from a specific perspective, like children, parents, scholars, politicians, heretics, all that sort of thing. And then we've got establishing a truth as well. So, the first time someone decides to establish a truth about the storytellers, tell them. You'll ask the group a question about the storytellers. Then, since it's a question of facts about the storytellers, we decide as a group what the answer is. At first, these truths will all be working towards an answer to a broader question of who the storytellers are. You can pick a question from the establishing a truth about the storyteller sheet, or ask one of your own that's similar. It could be inspired by the story, but it doesn't need to be. It could just be something you're curious about, or something which you think is cool, And in this grey box here, it says some questions do more than others to fill in concrete details about the storytellers. If you're playing a quick game, it will help to lean towards directly establishing facts about the storyteller's life with questions like, what is society's form of government? Or what are their family structures? If you want a more leisurely game with time for lots of stories, it will help lean towards questions which focus on the ways the storytellers think about themselves. Like, what kinds of animals do the storytellers associate themselves with? While answering questions from the first group, make sure that the question is really about the storyteller. Whilst answering questions from the first group, make sure, there should be probably a comma there, the question is really about storytellers. Do not let it slip into questions starting to connect facts about storytellers to elements of the story. This is really important. You really want to emphasize that we should not assume the storytelling culture is anything like the culture in these stories. They may not live in the same landscape or even on the same planet, and may be as distant culturally and technologically as we are from ancient Egyptians or the protagonists of a space opera. And may be distant culturally and technologically as we are from ancient Egyptians or the protagonists of a space opera as are from us. The players will often slip into asking questions that assume the storytellers live in the same landscape or have major cultural continuity with the stories. You should push back on that. It's not against the rules, but it should be a deliberate, conscious choice. While answering the first group of questions, make sure the answers stick to talking about storytellers and don't slip in connections between storytellers and the stories yet. The first group of questions is about establishing a sense of who the storytellers are. They may be excited to skip ahead and find out the thematic connections between the storytellers and the stories they tell, but it is important to wait to have a developed picture of who the storytellers are before you do that. The person who asks the question should follow the consensus rules to help the group reach an answer to the question, so that temperature check we were talking about before. Once the answer has been recorded, it is time for the next story. When the group has established 4 truths about the storytellers, and also every character has at least one story about them, wait for both, even if one happens long before the other. Call for a break in the flow of stories. Make sure everyone sees the steps on page 25. Okay, so we've got some examples of questions here. So like, what is the current religion? How is the wealth distributed? Interesting. And then we've got some questions for the middle of the game. And later on in the game, so we've got more questions. Okay. Oh, look, there's even like a flow diagram. Oh, I like that. Oh, hell yeah, for flow diagrams. You don't have to take this rule literally and can exercise a lot of judgment about when to take a break. This is one of the big detriments for how long the game takes, so if you want to fit a complete game in a shorter period of time, call for a break sooner, and if everyone's having a good time telling stories, you can always wait for more. Tell the group, we're going to have a think about what we know about the storytellers. Read all the truths you've established so far. Then ask the group the unifying question from the established truth sheet, which you've been working towards. The first break is, who are the storytellers? And later breaks it'll be like, those storytellers probably, relate to the stories? And then what is the critical history of the stories? So you have these like at least 2 breaks in here. Interesting. Ask the group to answer this question. The answer will build upon the truths you have established about the storytellers, but is also likely to fill in the other details. Your group might come to an enthusiastic consensus, with people shouting out additional ideas that fit into your collective picture about who these people are. If not, you can use the consensus rules to negotiate an answer to this question as a group. If you're really not on the same page, you might not be ready to answer it yet. You can go back to telling stories and establishing truths and come back to this in the next break. If you know you want to play a longer game, you can intentionally wait longer before answering. Instead of expecting that the group is ready to answer the unifying questions, you ask, do we know the answer to this question yet? And unless the group is enthusiastic about knowing the answer, go back to telling stories and continue to establish truths working towards answering the same question. So that's interesting. It's allowing you to be like, make sure you're really confirming this with everyone. Like that consensus is so important, and so that active listening comes into it. If you're going to play the game in several play sessions, this is a natural point to stop. Okay, so you could play it, like it says, like 6 hours, under 6 hours. But if you're doing like a full, a couple of sessions, then that could be interesting. It'd be cool to come back to it, I think, and develop it. The first 2 times you answer a unifying question, or you decide you're not going to answer it, go back to telling stories. If you answer the unifying question the next time someone establishes a truth about the storytellers, Remind them to move on to the next set of questions. So this is what it was talking about. Let's go back up here. So we start up here for early in the game. And then once we think we've done, and after that break, we come to here, the relatings. How do them storytellers relate to the stories? And then finally, later on, we have this, what is the critical history of the stories? So here, we've got stuff like, how are these stories misunderstood? How many authors there are? Which stories are popular and central, and which ones are unpopular and viewed as less canonical? Answering the third question, completing the picture of who tells these stories, why and how these stories reach their current form, finishes the game. Not that stops you telling, that stops you from telling more stories any way you want. If you continue playing, or when you start playing again after a break, tell the group, we're going to revisit the mythic elements and see if we want to change any of them. Read one of the mythic elements to the group. Try to start with ones which have been used the most. Tell the group, we can decide to leave it alone, or to retire this element entirely, or to change it. We can change it to reflect things we've learnt from our stories, or add something new that we will want to see show up in later stories. Wait for a moment to see what people want to do with this element. If necessary, use a temperature check to reach a consensus, but usually the group will be able to reach an agreement informally. One by one, read the other mythic elements and have the group consider each one in turn. After this process, if the group has fewer than 5 mythic elements, because we might have retired them, tell the group we can also add a new mythic element if we want. See if the group wants to add a new one. Again, you can do a temperature check to make sure you have it, but usually you'll be able to reach agreement about whether you want to add one and what element it is, and what element is, if there is one, without that. So I think it's nice that you're constantly checking in and constantly going back to that sort of code, that sort of codified thing that you made at the beginning. I like that a lot. Tell the group, reread your character. If you want to change something about them, you can do that now. You might change things that turned out not to describe the character as well you expected, or change things because you got bored with that, so the next stories that we tell about them can be different. You don't have to change anything. Cross out anything you change and write a new version above or next to it. You can also retire and unretire echoes now if you'd like. People could also choose to retire their character for a time and make a new one now if they like. Once everyone's finished, ask everyone to reread the character's introduction and whether or not anything has changed, and remind the group of their echoes. So this is if you wanted to carry on, repeat the process, and rechange everything, so that's good. And then we've got some credits as well. And then it goes into character changes. So there you go. So those are the main things about the game. I do wonder, I'm just trying to work it out. So you do it when you have breaks. So you have it when you have established 4 truths about storytellers and when every character's got at least one story about them. So that's the first break. And then you ask the unifying question from the first break is, who are storytellers? Right. So you could have quite a few stories, quite a few truths, up to like, I'm just trying to work this out. Like 8 truths, I'm guessing? Yes. Possibly. Having those critical history. So, okay, I like the development, I like that, but yeah, that last bit, I think I need to go. I would have to see a play example of that, I think. There you go. We won't go too much into the handouts. We've got some examples in between rounds. So that's the way we can review stuff. Exactly, or that check-in. I love this consensus document. Yeah, it's great. And it goes through it in so much detail as well. Oh, if you're the person facilitating there's a mistake there. No, you gotta temperature check, discussion. There you go. Nice. Okay, there you go. That is Canon. With a summary and those handouts and stuff like that. What do we make of it? It's very interesting. I love the structure of once and then that ritual phrase. I love that. I'm coming up with stuff like that. I like the fact we're making characters. It feels very collaborative, very improv heavy. I can imagine it like seeing a live show of that happening. I think, yes, you'd have to make it so that if you're going to do it in one session, you definitely have to keep it short. So I definitely think at most 4 players, one sort of person facilitating, maybe not even taking part, and then 3 players talking, because you can have up to 6 players. So that's wild, because then you can have loads of things established about the... Oh no, I guess not, because it's when we've got 4 troops and everyone's got one story. So yeah, so that makes sense. But yeah, I think the check-in stuff is really good. I like the idea. I like it being called a temperature check. I think it's an interesting thing. I think I can see this being played on the road, like if you were doing a road trip, or if you're doing, like it says, like around the campfire, perhaps. It definitely feels like a cool, atmospheric, almost LARP-like story. I'd even probably get dressed up for it as well. And I like how it talked about the advice about saying like the storytellers are not from the same culture or from the same landscape as the ones in the stories they're telling. So it's like almost meta a little bit. So I like that. I wish there was. I think my only critiques, is that I would love to see more examples of it, more examples of telling the story. Maybe an actual read through of a play example, especially for the break stuff at the end. Like it gives it a little bit of examples. Maybe a little bit more in the layout for like the suggestions and stuff. Maybe actually like have it out in boxes. Maybe a way to roll randomly if people are really stuck. But yeah, I thought it was alright actually. It's a way to build worlds, and I can imagine you combine this with Told by Starlight, with the other Together Alone game we looked at. That guy that was the guy. The one that talked about you're someone that's come to this land as an ambassador for your people, and someone is guiding you through and telling the stories. So yeah, I like the different ways of doing this. Did not know what to expect from it, and yet here we are. This is all good, fantastic. Well, if folks are interested, this game you can get the Ashcan version. This is the edition we'll be looking at for free if you go to the Vermilion Games website and check out Canon there. So yeah, I'll put the link in the chat. It should be in the link in the bio or the doobly-doo underneath as well if you're on YouTube. So yeah, go and check it out. That's it. A nice quick one. I love a good quick Too Long Didn't Read tabletop RPG. Yeah, so we'll be back next week. We've got 2 planned next week, Monday and Tuesday, which is a little bit different to our normal like Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays. On Tuesday, we've got, I think that's the Rats one. Let me double check. I should know this off the top of my head. Ooh. Where is my... You should have it up. Yeah. Oh, I am sorry. No, Monday is Princess Bride. Finally, we're going to do Princess Bride. So that's Monday, the 12th of August, at 11 a.m. Central Time and then 5 p.m. BST, or check your local time zones. And on Tuesday, we're going to do Rats, a game of Furry Fury, which is a little bit longer, so we'll probably be back into the swing of it. But again, same time, same bat channel. And then I'm going to have to look through. It's been I kind of eased off a little bit when I was planning this stuff because I was getting very busy for Gen Con, and now Gen Con's over, I'm still busy. So I think my plan is to do 2 Too Long Didn't Reads a week at least, and maybe do the odd 1 or 2 other streams. Maybe a solo stream or 2, because I've got loads of solo games I'd love to play. But equally, I might just run Red Dead Redemption, because I really enjoy it. But yeah, you can go check this out. But if you're like Fiona, where else can you hear you in the times that I'm not on screen? Check out What Am I Rolling, a twice monthly tabletop RPG one-shot podcast. We've done lots of game design interviews. We've just recently had one with Everest Burke of Button King Games, which is all about a solo tarot card game that's coming out. It's going to Kickstarter next Tuesday, called Jude's World, and it's all about divorce. Hooray! So if you played It Takes Two, if you've watched Parent Trap, those sort of idealistic, like, this divorce shouldn't be like this, or like trying to get people back together shouldn't be like this, go check out that game. I'm very excited for it, and I'm a big fan of Everest's work. On top of that, what was the other thing? If you're like Fiona, all I care about is D&D, and I'm like, I get it. I did buy an alt copy of the Infinite Staircase with Gen Con because I couldn't find it anywhere else, and so that's my reading for this afternoon, after I've done another interview for Aware. But yeah, so if you want to check out the DM's Book Club, that's a weekly book club podcast about Dungeons & Dragons and how we can improve it and implement it into any story that we're telling. Again, you do not need to know D&D. Not one RPG is for everyone. I'm a big fan of that. And also we read the books, so you don't have to, because we appreciate it's not a great time for wizards just now. Interestingly enough, Red Dead Redemption talks about Pinkertons quite a bit. So there you go. So those are the 2 things there. Obviously, we'll do some more Too Long Didn't Read tabletop RPGs. I don't think there's anything else to promote necessarily, except, oh shit, I'm such a fool. Of course there's something to promote, Fiona. There's always something to promote. Let me just get the will it work? Yes, absolutely. So I'm part of something called Euphoria. Euphoria, which is run by the wonderful JC Darcy and Ida. And during their they had a bit of a soft launch into June, July, and now we're doing the Summer of Sci-Fi. So please go check out. That's the sort of press release that we put on for Rascal. But go check out their Twitch and YouTube, where we're playing a whole host of sci-fi games over the summer. Currently, we've got Scum and Villainy that's going out. We have a wonderful, wonderful cast. We've got some solo games coming out. We've got some panels. We've got some interviews. I've pre-recorded a stream called for Small Creatures Such as We, and then I'll be doing a live stream of One Breath Left, which we covered on Too Long Didn't Read as well. So please come check us out. Please come support. Euphoria is trying to raise the bar for excellence in TTRPGs for the UK and EU scene. So in terms of diversity, in terms of quality, in terms of just safety in general. That's what we're trying to do. So please come along and check it out. Please read the press release. It has it all in there. And then come join us on our various streams. There's a whole schedule waiting, which is really good. And just check them out anyway. They've got loads of things happening in the near future. But that's it, friends. I'm going to love you and leave you. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, wherever you are. Maybe you're at the Fringe, I don't know, in Edinburgh. But we'll see you back on Monday, that one day. And then, yeah, as always, though, let me know if there's an RPG I should be checking out as well. You can do so if you would like to. Just says, that is not how I spell Discord. Well, good job, me. There we go, Discord. Come check out the Discord. It's the What Am I Rolling and DM's book club Discord, and you can come chat to us about RPGs and please suggest any that you found interesting, because I'm always a big fan of looking up new things. That's it, my friends. Much love, and hopefully play more games as always. I find the end of stream button. I'll say goodbye for now. Goodbye for now.